Hi, my name is John Martin and I am a tonsil cancer survivor. The purpose of me doing these videos is to help other tonsil cancer patients and their families understand what this journey looks like. My situation started in August of 2015. I had a sore throat for a couple weeks, so I grabbed my iPhone and I turned on the flashlight and I looked inside my mouth, and lo and behold, the back of my mouth, my tonsil, my left tonsil specifically, was quite enlarged. It looked like a little mountain was on it. So that was not a good sign, so I went and saw an ear, nose, and throat specialist. Unfortunately, they thought I had an asymmetrical tonsil and that my larynx was maybe a little bit sore because of GERD and issues associated with GERD. Well, 3 weeks later, I woke up to blood on my pillow. I had started to slough, meaning actually the growth on my tonsil had started to fall off and to bleed. And it was very concerning, so I went back to another ear, nose, and throat specialist. We immediately did a biopsy. I immediately went in and got a CT scan, and sure enough, I found out within a day that I had HPV-16, tonsil cancer HPV-16. So at that moment in time, I felt I had to move swiftly to learn more about this. And I wish there was a source like this at that time to give me the knowledge and information for what I might do immediately and what the impact might be in the months ahead. So in my case, I'm based in Chicago. I went to Northwestern Memorial Hospital. I went to Rush Hospital. I went to University of Chicago. I went to North Shore University Health Systems. And then I also did some calling around places like Mayo Clinic, Anderson down in Houston, some of the best places to see if the protocols were any different. And in my particular case, at that moment in time, it seemed that the protocol that almost all of them recommended was a concurrent radiation and chemo regimen over about an 8-week period. There were some nuances. University of Chicago suggested you stay there for 5 days and go home on weekends. Others suggested you get the radiation Monday through Friday and you can come and go out of your own home. I chose that. Once I realized that the protocols were the same, there was nothing really breakthrough or emerging that was different from any of them, I decided to use a quality hospital and doctor team close to my home, because literally I was there every day for radiation, and then one day a week I had to go in for the chemo. So I chose Dr. Bruce Brockstein as my oncologist and Dr. Raghavan as my radiologist. Dr. Brockstein's from Evanston Hospital in particular. They're all part of North Shore Community. North Shore University Health. And Dr. Raghavan was at Glenbrook Hospital. One thing I was highly focused on was making sure that all the doctors and services I used were all part of the same in-network. The last thing you want to do is use these doctors that are in-network and then go over here, use other doctors that are out of network and start a whole new deductible situation. That can be very costly. So being on top of your insurance, I think, is very wise, in trying to stay in network with quality folks that are close to home. That worked for me. So at that point in time, I realized which doctor and hospital I was going to use. Then I had to begin the process. One of the things they're going to tell you is that you have to be fitted for a mask. A mask to me is a little unsettling because I'm claustrophobic. So as best I understood, I was going to get this mask fitted to my face, kind of coming down onto my shoulders. So somewhat like a goalie's mask and shoulder pads, if you will, because essentially you're going to have to be clamped down to a metal board to do your treatments. So I had to get comfortable with that whole idea, and I did. It took me a couple of weeks of taking a calming down medicine to get me relaxed, so when I went to my treatments, I wouldn't be too uneasy with the idea. Once I realized that when my treatments began, the actual radiation sessions might only last about 15 minutes. It seems long at first when you're clamped down, but you kind of get used to it. You understand the processes and the various steps of the machine. In my case, the machine started all the way down on the ground and then came around and stopped at 7 stops for an entire radiation session. So each stop might be about 20 to 30 seconds, and then you hear the machine move, and then it does what it does. But within about 15 minutes from start to finish, there's an imaging part in the beginning where they get it all set up. And trust me, you want them to get it set up because it's very precise. And these are obviously very strong rays that are actually, the unit is called grays. So there's 2 grays per session, 35 sessions for 70 grays. That takes about 8 weeks is what my program was. On Mondays, I would go into a different hospital close by, but I chose to go where Dr. Brockstein's main staff was at to do my chemo. And you'd always go in, get a blood test first to make sure that you were ready and essentially qualified for that week's chemo. Every week I was qualified except once where they said, John, your cell count's too low, why don't you take a week off and then come back? And that was actually a welcome break in the action. What you should expect is the first couple weeks are not that big of a deal. But in my case, by the 3rd week, you're starting to get this accumulated impact of all this radiation going in one concentrated area, and of course the chemo impact too. But essentially you get sunburned here, and of course inside your mouth turns into an ulcer essentially. It's very, very fried in there. By the 4th week, I was noticing that I was not eating. After 3 days, I was going, if I keep this up, I'll be down to nothing. I had already lost, a fair amount of weight the first couple weeks. You lose your appetite, you lose interest in eating and drinking, and as the weeks go on, it starts to hurt. I had always been told that many, many, many people get a feeding tube and it's not a big deal. For some odd reason, the first couple of weeks I was thinking, no, this is a badge of honor. I can get through this without a feeding tube. Well, in the 4th week, I wasn't eating anything. I'm going, if this goes on for much longer, I'm going to be really, my weight's going to be down to nothing, and that's no way to, try and combat this tough protocol I'm going through. So during the 4th week, I said, darn it, I want to get a feeding tube in immediately before this weekend comes on, because I didn't want to lose another 3 days of not eating anything. So sure enough, I did. And the good news on the feeding tube, it is super simple. It's a simple procedure. It takes about, a half hour. And I was happy right after that because at least I could now start putting some nourishment in me to hopefully fight the stupid cancer protocol I was going through. So bottom line, don't be turned off or nervous about doing the feeding tube. I'm so glad I did that. Something that's going on during this whole process is meds. You're going to be on a variety of meds, and they'll start off slowly, and then you'll start taking them as you need them. And there'll be no question that you will be uncomfortable, you will be in pain, and all of a sudden you won't want anything in your mouth area. It's just everything is painful. So I was on a type of morphine, I was on a fentanyl patch. One thing I do want to say and caution you about the meds is definitely take a stool softener. I had some very bad days during this whole treatment, but truly 2 of the worst days of the whole process was the 2 days I ran out of stool softeners and I failed to get them a simple pill at the Walgreens. Well, sure enough, a day and a half, 2 days later, I felt the impact of not having a stool softener, and it was a very, very tough couple days to get through that situation. So stay on top of your meds, stay on top of your stool softener. My wife was very concerned that I would not become addicted to these pills. Well, the reality is you're on them for, could be 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 weeks, so there is going to be an addiction there. But the real key is making sure you wean yourself off them as soon as you don't need them, which will start to happen. Once your last week is behind you, you truly do start to feel better right away. not a lot right away, but just every day is a little bit better. So for me, I kind of had this checklist, okay, 10 more days to go. I got 10 more radiation sessions left. And I knew as every week went on, it would get worse and worse and worse, and it did. In the last month, it was hard to keep anything down. I was carrying a bucket around with me because I never knew when I would feel nauseous, and I would have to use that bucket. But pretty much after the final week, things got better because I was not polluting my body anymore. I beat the crap out of it, and so now I could start to get better. I did use the feeding tube for about another 2 months after I stopped my sessions. I was actually doing a combination of eating again and using the feeding tube to make sure I could get to my calorie count. And in my case, I was trying to do 2,200, 2,300 calories a day. You could try and do it with the box of liquids they give you, but sometimes it's hard to muscle those things down. The 5th box was, always tough for me. And next thing you know, I maybe wouldn't hit my goal, but I tried. And once the treatment stopped, I did a combination of the food that I put in my feeding tube and what I could get down my throat. Speaking of food, you're gonna probably have the same cravings I did, which is you want it to be soft. You want it to be moist. You do not want spicy things. If you go back to the summer of 2015, my wife said, "John, could you please lose some weight and don't drink so much?" Well, the reality is you will lose weight. I think you're going to lose, at least 12% of your body weight. And in my case, the drinking, I certainly would have my fair share of beverages socially and on the weekends. But I'll tell you, the last thing you want to do is put anything that's acidic or alcohol that stings in your mouth. So for me, I lost weight and I, actually pretty much quit drinking. I can drink a little bit now. It's been a year, but I just don't have the same craving that I once did. And it might have been because during those initial periods, you had that reaction to things that hurt, and you just shy away from those things that hurt. And certainly alcohol hurt, spicy foods hurt, dry foods. Eating a steak, is very hard. So my go-to foods, like in the morning, I would have 2 eggs. I'd actually cook them in water and olive oil, so they'd almost be like suspended, and they'd come out like floating and super moist. And then I would do oatmeal, and I'd pour applesauce on top of the oatmeal and pour that all on top of the leftover eggs and make sure it's moist and tasted great. I would go to our local neighborhood store where they pre-made food for you. So there would be mashed potatoes with some gravy or butter. I would have turkey meatloaf that I would heat up. I would have soups. You'd have things like peas, things that were just soft and moist. I always have a bottle of water nearby because you will get dry mouth. There's just no question that your salivary glands will be zapped. In some cases, they might be zapped forever. In other cases, they may come back. I still very much have dry mouth, but it clearly is better than it was initially. And my taste buds are way better than they were before. I could eat many, many of the foods I once did, but I still gravitate to the soft and the moist. Hopefully that gives you a sense for certain things, and we'll cover more in the next chapter. Thank you. I would get asked the question, what about hair loss during the treatments? Well, some people don't lose hair. Some people lose a lot of hair. I had a weird situation. I actually lost my hair from here down because remember I told you how the machine would rotate around me all the way down to the floor and all the way around me, and the ones that are shooting up from the floor would hit the back of my hairline right here. And sure enough, as the weeks went on, I lost all the hair back there. So it kind of looked goofy for a while, but I'll be darned, come, in my case, a month after, it started seeing some peach fuzz come in, and just keep coming back, and after 2, 3, 4 months, I had a full head of hair back there, and it was a good feeling. So you may lose some hair, but but you'll probably get it back. As we carry on the conversation about tonsil cancer, I wanted to talk a little bit about the staging of head and neck cancers, which are different than the rest of your body. I don't want you to be alarmed if you have a stage 3 or 4 head or neck cancer. You know, in many cases, when you hear that, that can be quite frightening. But in the case of head and neck cancers, they do the staging differently. I happen to have a pretty sizable growth on my tonsil that you could see when you open up the mouth. And I had 1 or 2 nodes that were slightly enlarged here. So all of a sudden I'm in 2 locations because the one location was large. You start doing the math on it, next thing you know, you could be at stage 3 or even early stage 4. Unlike other body parts where stage 4, in some cases, is obviously very bad news. In the case of head and neck, do your homework on it, but sometimes a stage 3 could be equivalent to a stage 1 in another body part. So I just thought I'd let you know that. Another thing I wanted to mention to you is working during your treatments. Everyone's going to be different. Everyone's at a different point in their career. I had made the determination that the #1 priority for me was to get healthy. And I knew if I was stressed out trying to work at the same time, if I was trying to get up at 5 or 6 in the morning to catch a train or get to work early, that would probably mean I wouldn't be getting a good night's sleep. I knew my sleep was going to be impacted anyways because of the dry mouth, the liquids I was taking, the pain, the up and down throughout the night, not sleeping well. So bottom line, just be careful on overdoing it during your treatments because it'll be tough to work. So probably plan on not working for a month or 2 or 3 if you can get away with it. That'd be my recommendation. I wanted to let you know also that as you're coming out of this, there's going to be certain therapies that you're going to be involved with. One of them for me was swallowing therapy. So remember, I was on a feeding tube, so I was not having a lot of food or liquids going down my throat. So one of the things I had to go through was swallowing therapy, where essentially you're kind of learning how to eat again. The good news is it was not problematic. You kind of built on it a little bit more every day, but be aware of that. Another thing that you should be aware of is lymphedema. I noticed about a month after my treatments had concluded that I had, they called it turkey neck, where sure enough, that some of your lymph node fluids are collecting here. They just didn't flow as well as they would normally. And next thing you know, I had a little turkey pouch here. And there are certain treatments that you do, gentle, rubbing with your hands. They'll teach you all of that. But don't be alarmed if you have to have lymphedema treatments. It's pretty simple, but it's very important. I was doing it 3 times a day. I even had like a stocking put around my neck in the evenings where I do that for a half hour, 45 minutes to compress things and hopefully cause the fluids to flow better. So I wanted to make you aware of that. As I was coming out of my treatments, and sure enough, I got down all the way to 150 pounds. So I was certainly a thinner version. I'm still thin. I'm probably up to about 159, 160 now. But I came up with a special smoothie that I drink today. I make a big batch every morning, and it's my mid-morning and mid-afternoon nourishment. So I'll have my normal breakfast, a lunch, and a dinner. And in the middle of the morning and middle of the afternoon, I will have a full big smoothie. And what is in this thing includes a protein powder that it's called beaming, that we found out in San Diego, that's just full of great healthy things. I will have avocado. I will have bananas, strawberry, blueberries, dates. I put a handful of super greens in there. I put a scoop of peanut butter in there. I put olive oil in there, so I'm trying to follow a little bit of this Mediterranean diet. I put mushroom extract in there. It's good for the immune system, and you can top it off with milk. You can top it off with almond milk, whatever you feel matches you. Half the stuff my wife would never have, because she's trying to have a smoothie where you don't gain weight. I was trying to have a smoothie where I did gain weight, but healthy calories. So I wanted to share that with you. I think you'll find that type of smoothie easy to get down, tasty, and can help put some pounds back on for you. All right, we'll cover more on the next version. I sometimes got asked the question, how did I get through this? Well, I'll tell you a couple things that I really enjoyed. Opening up the mail and having a card from a friend or a relative or a loved one was always a highlight of the day. So I encourage you to send cards to your friends that are sick. A big positive was when I'd get a gift in the mail. So surprise packages were always welcome. That would always put a smile on my face. Just encouraging text messages or emails, all of that was good stuff. And on occasion, I enjoyed a visitor. Of course, you'd have to coordinate it to make sure it's a good day. You don't always know if it's going to be a good day or not, so you got to make sure it's people you can say, hey, don't come by, I'm not feeling good right now. But occasional visits was good. Try to keep a positive attitude through this whole ordeal if you can. Easier said than done, but before you know it, it'll be over. So try and stay as positive as you can, knowing that the protocol is disastrous, but the outcomes for tonsil cancer can be very good. And I also would be remiss if I did not do a special thank you to my wife, Sally, who essentially took care of me. I called her Mrs. Inside. She took care of me inside the home. And another special shout out to my brother, Billy, who was my Mr. Outside. I was very blessed. He was retired and was available and was very loving and was able to take me to virtually all my doctor's appointments. And trust me, it's very, very powerful having somebody there with you as your advocate. Make sure you're not forgetting things when you get back home. In conclusion, I hope you have found these videos to be helpful. I wish you the best of luck as you go through your procedures and your protocol. There will be some silver linings in this whole process for you, I'm sure. And if I can be of help to you in any way, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Good luck and God bless.